U.S. stocks are tumbling for the second day. The Dow is already down 1,000 points after dropping almost 1,700 points.
Just moments ago, China announced plans to implement 34% retaliatory, tariffs on U.S. goods.
While Trump swings his tariff hammer, China's playing chess, and they're winning. China's struck a colossal energy deal with Canada, and it's a dagger to America's heart. Rongsheng Petrochemical, a Chinese refining beast churning out 800,000 barrels a day, has set up shop in Calgary, the epicenter of Canada's oil empire. This isn't a side deal, it's a tectonic shift. With Trump's 10% tariff pricing Canadian oil out of U.S. markets, China swooped in, securing a reliable tariff-free supply line to Asia. Canada's stepping up as a global energy titan, with exports to China jumping 35% in Q1 2025, per Statistics Canada. Asia's energy hunger is insatiable. China alone burns through 15 million barrels daily, and Canada's filling the gap America left behind. But China's not stopping at oil. Their beef rejection is a calculated gut punch to U.S. farmers. In March 2025, China slammed the door on 150,000 tons of American beef, worth $520 million, claiming substandard safety compliance. Ports like Shanghai and Guangdong turned ships away without a word of warning. This wasn't random, it was revenge. Days earlier, Trump hit China with a 25% tariff on electric vehicles and components, a $38 billion blow to their trade. Analysts at Reuters flagged the timing. Beef rejection spiked fourfold from January's levels, a clear signal of retaliation. America's agricultural backbone is cracking. Texas, Kansas, and Nebraska, supplying 70% of U.S. beef exports to China, are reeling. Wholesale beef prices tanked 7.3% in 2 weeks, cold storage is overflowing with 200,000 tons of unsold product, and losses hit $1.8 billion by April, per the USDA. China's playing the long game. They're not just rejecting beef, they're humiliating the U.S. on the world stage. Farmers are drowning, with a Nebraska producer telling CNN his $4 million export contracts hanging by a thread. Domestic markets can't absorb the surplus. Beef consumption's flat at 57 pounds per capita, and prices are crashing. Meanwhile, China's grinning, securing alternative suppliers and flexing their economic muscle. This is a masterclass in retaliation, and America's paying the price. Now, Japan's throwing fuel on the fire. Japan's teaming up with China to hit back at U.S. trade policies, and it's a betrayal Trump didn't see coming. For decades, Japan was America's loyal ally. Think post-Wang trade pacts and military bases. But Trump's tariffs have pushed them too far. Japan's auto giants, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, are pivoting to China, the world's new car kingpin. In 2024, China overtook the U.S. as the top car exporter, shipping 5.5 million units globally, per the International Trade Center. Japan's not just watching, they're joining the party. New deals signed in February 2025 lock Japan into co-producing electric vehicles with China, targeting 2 million units annually by 2027. As of April 2025, Trump slapped a 10% tariff on Canadian oil and gas, a move that sent shockwaves through North America's energy markets. But that's just the warm-up. A 25% tariff on all cars not made in the United States has turned the auto industry into a war zone. Take the Ford F-150, America's best-selling truck and a symbol of red, white, and blue pride. You'd think it's 100% American, right? Wrong. It's built from 30,000 parts sourced across 24 countries. Alternators from Mexico, wheels from South Korea, drive shafts from Canada. Every one of those parts now faces a 25% tax, jacking up production costs by $3,000 to $6,000 per vehicle. Add tariffs on steel and aluminum, essential for every car, and you're looking at another $400 to $600 per unit. The math's brutal. A $48,000 truck now costs $60,000. American consumers are getting hammered, and they're not happy. Trump's selling this as a master plan to bring jobs home. He wants factories back on U.S. soil, no tariffs, no excuses. He's betting that companies like Ford and GM will ditch global supply chains and build everything stateside. But here's where it falls apart. The reality is a logistical nightmare. Relocating supply chains isn't flipping a switch. It's a decade-long, multi-billion-dollar slog. A 2025 study from the American Automotive Policy Council estimates it'd cost $45 billion in 8 years to shift just 60% of the U.S. auto supply chain back home. And that's assuming no delays or quality drops, which is a fantasy. Companies aren't hiring, they're automating. Robotics are cheaper than humans, and with tariffs driving up costs, automation's up 22% in U.S. factories since 2024, per the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Workers? They're out of luck. Jobless claims in Michigan and Ohio spiked 15% in Q1 2025. The U.S. auto industry is a house of cards collapsing. For decades, it thrived on free trade with Canada and Mexico. Think NAFTA's golden years. Now, Trump's ripped that foundation apart. Parts once flowed seamlessly across borders. Today they're stalled at customs, racking up fees. Production lines are choking, with delays costing automakers $1.2 billion monthly, according to Bloomberg. And while Trump claims businesses are flooding back, the data's grim. Only 3% of surveyed CEOs plan to fully reshore by 2027 per Deloitte. This isn't a bold strike, it's a self-inflicted wound, and the bleeding's just begun. The numbers are jaw-dropping. U.S. tariffs have spiked American car production costs by 15% since 2023, while China's costs dropped 8% thanks to scale and efficiency. Japan's exports to the U.S. fell 12% in Q1 2025, but shipments to China soared 28%, per Japan's Ministry of Economy. This isn't a side hustle. It's a full-on alliance. Japan's bringing tech, think battery innovation, and China's got the market muscle. Together, they're bypassing U.S. tariffs entirely, flooding Asia and Europe with cheaper, smarter cars. The U.S. is being left in the dust, with Detroit's output down 18% year over year, per the Federal Reserve. Why the shift? Trump's policies made it inevitable. A 25% tariff on Japanese cars and parts, like the $3 billion in engines shipped annually, crippled their U.S. profits. Japan's had enough, and China's offering a lifeline. This duo's rewriting the global trade playbook, and experts are sounding alarms. It's not the strong swallowing the weak, says automotive analyst Hiroshi Tanaka. It's the fast outpacing the slow. America's moving like a dinosaur, debating tariffs while Japan and China sprint ahead. While China and Japan forge ahead, Russia's lurking in the shadows, and they're cashing in. Russia's beef exports to China exploded 32% in Q1 2025, hitting 41,000 tons after China's U.S. beef snub. This isn't a fluke. It's a master plan years in the making. Back in 2023, Moscow inked deals with Beijing to streamline veterinary inspections, unlocking 40 processing plants previously barred from trade. Then came the logistics coup. A new rail corridor from Volgograd to Shanghai, launched in November 2024, cuts shipping time from 28 days by sea to 11 by rail. Russia's not just selling beef, they're seizing a throne. The U.S. is hemorrhaging market share. In 2022, America held 12.6% of China's beef imports, $1.2 billion annually. By April 2025, that's crumbled to under 6%, per China's General Administration of Customs. Russia's not stopping there. 89% of their beef trades are settled in yuan or rubles, sidestepping the U.S. dollar and thumbing their nose at Washington's financial dominance. This is economic warfare, and Russia's winning without firing a shot. Their government's pumping $1.1 billion into 3 megafarms, each housing 100,000 cattle, aiming to double exports by 2027. America's loss is Russia's gain. While U.S. beef rots in storage, Russian shipments flood Chinese ports. Supply chains are shifting for good, with Kazakhstan and others jumping in, locking in contracts and building dedicated networks. Expert Deborah Elms warns, once trade pivots to new standards and currencies, the U.S. can't claw it back. Russia's not just an opportunist, they're a predator, and America's the prey. Canada's caught in a vice, and it's squeezing tight. Trump's annexation rant has Canadians seething. In a March 2025 press conference, he declared Canada only makes sense as a U.S. state, calling the border artificial and promising a perfect merger. It's a diplomatic slap in the face. Canada's no pushover. Its $2 trillion economy, and 38 million people say otherwise. Prime Minister Trudeau fired back, vowing Canada will never bend to such absurdity. But tariffs are the real weapon. A 10% hit on oil and gas and 25% on cars have cost Canada $18 billion in exports since January, per the Bank of Canada. China's energy deal is a lifeline, with exports to Asia up 35%, but it's not enough. Canada's auto industry is teetering. Tied to U.S. supply chains, plants in Ontario face $2.5 billion in losses from tariffed parts, with 20,000 jobs at risk. Retaliation's brewing. Canada's mulling $125 billion in counter tariffs on U.S. goods, like lumber and tech. Meanwhile, Trump's tariffs are strangling citizens. Gas prices in Toronto hit $2.10 per liter, and car costs are up 22%. Home prices in Vancouver and Toronto top $1 million. Taxes bite at 53% for high earners. And now trade chaos threatens collapse. Canada's fighting a two-front war, and it's David versus two Goliaths. Across the Atlantic, Europe's not taking Trump's tariffs lying down. The European Union is gearing up for a fierce counterattack, and it's a game-changer in this escalating trade war. On April 4, 2025, as global markets tanked, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen dropped a bombshell. Europe's finalizing a massive retaliation package to shield its $5 trillion economy from Trump's 20% reciprocal tariff on EU goods. This isn't just talk. Brussels is ready to hit back hard, targeting American exports like tech, agriculture, and machinery, with duties that could top $150 billion annually, according to EU trade estimates. Why the fury? Trump's tariffs, unveiled on April 2nd, blindsided Europe, slapping a 10% baseline levy on all imports and an extra 20% on the EU for what he calls unfair trade barriers. European leaders are livid. French President Emmanuel Macron called it an attack on fair trade, urging firms to freeze U.S. investments. Europe's unity is its strength, with von der Leyen rallying all 27 member states to defend their 450 million consumers and 22 million jobs tied to exports. The EU's already battle-tested from Trump's first-term steel tariffs. Back then, they slapped $3 billion in duties on U.S. whiskey and motorcycles. This time it's bigger. Analysts predict a 30% drop in U.S.-EU trade volume by Q3 2025 if this tit-for-tat spirals out of control. The stakes are sky-high. Europe's auto giants, Volkswagen, BMW, Stellantis, face a $20 billion hit from higher U.S. costs, per Goldman Sachs. Italian leather and French wine? Add another $5 billion in losses. But here's the kicker. The EU's not just playing defense. They're negotiating with China and Japan to form a trade bloc that could freeze the U.S. out of $2 trillion in annual deals. Trump's pushing Europe into Asia's arms, and the fallout's rewriting alliances. The West's fracturing, fast. Zoom out to the global stage, and it's chaos. Trump's tariffs have triggered a $5 trillion Wall Street wipeout, and the bleeding's not stopping. On April 4, 2025, the S&P 500 lost $5 trillion in 2 days, its worst crash since the 2020 pandemic panic, after Trump's 10% global tariff and higher reciprocal duties sent investors running for cover. The Nasdaq's in a bear market, down 20% from its February peak, with tech titans like Apple and Nike shedding 9% and 14% in a single day. This isn't a blip. It's a reckoning. China's retaliation lit the fuse. Beijing fired back with 34% tariffs on all U.S. goods and choked off rare earth exports, critical for everything from iPhones to fighter jets. Oil's cratering, with Brent crude plunging 6% in 48 hours to $65 a barrel as global demand fears spike. JP Morgan sounding the alarm, a 60% chance of global recession by year-end, up from 40% pre-tariff. The U.S. dollar's crumbling, down 1.2% against the yen and Swiss franc, while gold's flirting with $3,100 an ounce as a safe haven stampede kicks in. No one's spared. Japan's Nikkei is set for its worst week in 5 years, with bank stocks tanking 8%. Canada's TSX hit a 7-month low, down 4%, as tariff uncertainty guts jobs, 15,000 lost in March alone, per Statistics Canada. The Fed's in a bind, with traders betting on 4 rate cuts by December to dodge a U.S. downturn. But inflation's looming. Barclays pegs U.S. prices at 4.2% by Q4 as import costs soar. This is Trump's trade war unmasked, a $1,900 tax hike per U.S. household, per the Tax Foundation, and a world economy teetering on collapse. The markets are screaming. Will anyone listen?